Career transitions are universal. It doesn't only happen to dancers. And someone who knows everything about that is Jos Akkermans. He's Associate Professor of Sustainable Careers and Organizational Behavior at the School of Business and Economics at Vrije Universiteit, Amsterdam. Please, Jos Akkermans. Jos, before I give the word to you, I just wanted to point out, okay, you're from the scientific world, of course,
yes.
From the academic world.
And I forgot to wear my lab coat, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because you had quite a special moment just before you ended up here, because there's maybe a similarity when it comes to academics and dance. There's a very strong hierarchy, and you want to get a higher level every time. What is happening to you next Monday?
Next Monday, I will officially be a full professor.
A full professor. So we don't have a full professor here yet, but he will be very soon. And how does that make you feel?
Relieved, happy. And this morning, I went to a place here nearby to take my measures for my personal gown. So that was a very, very special. So this is a really special day, actually.
It's a very special day.
Yes.
And you know everything about sustainable careers from maybe another perspective. Word is to Jos Akkermans.
Thank you very much. No, I still have to earn that, right? Today is, I mean, it's really a special day for me because, not just because of my gown fitting stuff, but when Brandon reached out to me and said, we're going to do the symposium, I heard you know everything about careers. Do you want to give a talk? I was immediately like, yes. I mean, I do quite some talks. I have to say no more often nowadays, otherwise I do no research and I have nothing to speak about. But dancing has been very special and important to me throughout my life as well. And I don't think you knew that when you invited me. And by no means anywhere close to professional level. But I was a dancing teacher for 15 years in ballroom and Latin American dancing, salsa. So when I started dancing at like age 12, I thought, this is not for me, but you know, I like this girl and she was dancing, so I was gonna go along. And then they all stopped after 2 years and I stayed for 20 years. Working there for 15 years alongside my studies, my PhD, my work at university. So dancing has a very special place in my heart. And if I can contribute even this today to the current dancers, the past dancers, the HR people working with dancers, then that would be really, really important to me. So I hope I can make that work. I want to start with a little story. And it's about my brother, who's on the right-hand side, and my sister, who's in the middle. Guess who the cute one on the left is? Right? We look like a bit of a mafia gang, right? Really serious. This is a very old picture. I want to talk a bit about my brother and sister because of the topic I'm going to speak of today, which is sustainable careers and career transitions. So let's start with my brother. My brother is 5 years older than I am. He's a very smart guy. But he never liked learning. When he was in high school, he could have passed anything he wanted to, but he was just not very motivated to study. So my parents constantly had to say, go study, go study, go study. And then in his 5th year, when he had to do his exams, he flunked his exams. The year after he passed, he decided not to go to any higher vocational education. He did intermediate vocational education, so for the Dutch people here, MBO, which he passed without even trying. And then he started working for a municipality doing financial administrative stuff, and he's still there, kind of boring. He's so much potential, never made true on his potential, utter failure. He knows I'm saying this about him, by the way, yeah. No, I was there last Saturday, and he knows this, so don't worry. There's no family argument. Then there's my sister. She also knows that I'm speaking about her. Polar opposite story. She is the epitome of lifelong learning. She's actually also a dancer. So she did higher vocational sports education, so she's a teacher in special needs education, and she specialized in dancing. So in the small place where we live, she set up this kind of dancing school, and it's become really huge. Last Saturday, they even had the national championships in Rotterdam, in Ahoy. So she's been very successful with that. After she passed as best of class, she started developing all kinds of healthy food programs at school, healthy movement programs. You know, she has 4 kids, but who cares? She did a professional master's in a year and a half, where most people take 3 years. Now they asked her to stay on to supervise new students in their thesis because she's awesome. She is, check, perfect. I assume you hear a tiny little bit of irony or even cynicism in my voice. And this is the reason. This utter failure story, this is how society tends to look at how we navigate our careers, right? If you're smart, you need to do university. You need to go, so he did a financial education. He should have gone to the big 4, EY, KPMG, Deloitte, you name it. He should have been rich, fancy suit, expensive car. But that is not who my brother is. If he would have gone to one of those companies, he would have been so incredibly unhappy that he would have probably burnt out within a few months. And conversely, for my sister, it just fit her motivations. She was excited to learn new things. She is this proactive person who takes up new things and just thinks, let's do something new, let's do something new. So both of them have done exactly what fits them, what makes them happy in their lives. And I'm not saying this is an easy story of, whatever you do, be proactive, craft everything and you'll be fine. Because they've both had a lot of setbacks, especially my brother with a divorce and a very bad things going on. But he managed to find a career that makes him happy, that makes him be the father he wants to be for his kids, while still doing the work that he considers fine, because he wants to spend more time on his life and on his family outside of work. So I think both of their careers are very sustainable. And I think this societal definition of utter failure versus perfect is complete nonsense. And I think if there's one thing that all of you, I hope you remember, and I know this sounds easier than it is, but whatever you do after your dancing career, and I'm going to get to dancing career in a few minutes, because actually I don't agree with calling it a dancing career, but bear with me. There is no perfect path. There is no idealized, this is what you should do after dancing. You should try to find something that is good for you. Will it ever compare to what you're doing now? Who knows? Maybe you should stop comparing, because this is so special and so specific, and you're so passionate about this, that probably nothing's going to compare, right? But if you stop comparing it to this and start thinking about, look at the stories we just heard, Brandon's story, Alberto's story. It's beautiful. None of them are sitting depressed under a bridge, doing nothing with their lives. They're doing fun stuff that they're enjoying. So a lot is possible, but don't care too much about what society tells you, because a lot of it is just this very normative view of what a career should be. In Dutch, we have 2 words for career. We have carrière and loopbaan. I always use the second because the word carrière, and also career in that sense, but English only has one. Carrière comes from the French word for horse racing. So it's about fast, competitive, be there as first. Loopbaan is a much more neutral word of, it's just a series of everything you do in your life that's work-related, which I like much more, because that's what a career is about. Not about being the fastest, the best. It's about doing things that allow you to find some degree of happiness, health, and productivity across your life. And that's essentially what a sustainable career is. So I'll get back to that later on, because I also have some models and definitions to prove that I'm a scientist. All right, let's go a few steps back and define what a career is, because we all know this word, we all speak about it. And if you go online, and I always used to say, if you search on Google Images, but nowadays I should just say, if you have some kind of prompt in ChatGPT, show me what a career looks like, you will still get thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures of ladders. People climbing onto ladders, people running, people shoving each other off ladders, people finding keyholes at the top of ladders. There are even pictures of ladders going all the way into heaven. It's beautiful. This idea, we even have metaphors for it, right? The career ladder is a very common metaphor for moving up in a company, for example. So this is so ingrained in our thinking of careers that we tend to think about careers as very predictable, hierarchical, upward things. There is a very clear point at which you start, usually after you graduate from some kind of educational program, or when you think, no, I am going to be a dancer, this is what I'm going to do now. And then the rest of it is following the same path, maybe sometimes taking a step sideways or up, but it's always this one path. It's quite predictable, very structured and hierarchical. And then hopefully, if you're lucky and you're successful, you find the key. So how about a career in dancing? I mean, if it ends, what's left in life, right? This is one of those special career paths, I think, where this is not just going from a job as an associate professor to a full professor. This is not something as I teach for this school in this village and now I'm going to switch to another school in another village. Those are career transitions as well. But transitioning from a role as a professional dancer to something entirely different, that's huge, right? That requires you to change everything, basically, in your identity, in your skills, in your activities. And so I found this picture for today, and I thought, yeah, this kind of signifies, I think, how many people are dreading this moment. And this is honestly, I'm going a bit off topic now, but I do want to say this. This is why I'm so happy that Omscholing is there. It's so good that there's a group dedicated to providing support to help you, or you for the ones who are going to do it, or any dancer, to navigate this transition successfully. So I think it's wonderful that you're there, and I hope you will always stay, because it's very valuable. All right, so this is the depressing part. You're all gonna fall down off a cliff, and this is the end. And then you're gonna lie there. Maybe we should take a picture at the end with it. No. Now we're going away from the depression and on towards the positive stuff. So here's one thing. This whole ladder metaphor of a career, it does not apply to careers anymore. I don't know why we're still using it. Please, if you're HR, now put your hands over your ears, because I'm going to say something nasty about HR. There are so many HR people, the ones who should know this, who are still drawing ladders when we're talking about career systems in organizations. It drives me crazy. For some people, this ladder still applies, true, but for most, actually in academia is one of the few businesses, well, not a business, one of the few kind of worlds, professional worlds, where this ladder still applies, where you go from PhD to postdoc to assistant prof to associate prof to full prof. But in most careers, in most fields, in most disciplines, this whole ladder phenomenon, it doesn't really exist anymore. Sure, there are promotions. Sure, if you go to one of the big four, you want to be partner in 10 years or whatever. But there's much more flexibility and dynamism in careers nowadays, where people switch jobs much more often. Not this huge transition maybe from dancer to something entirely different. But definitely all kinds of transitions within organizations, between different fields even. And so this idea of, I've made this choice once, this is it, is much less permanent nowadays. I always tell my students when they say, I don't know what to do because, it's so stressful and I have to find that dream job, I tell them, don't look for the dream job. It doesn't even matter if you end up in your first job and it's horrible, because at least you're going to learn from it that this is not what fits you. This is not what you like. You're young. You have like 40 years of working life left. It's fine to experiment, to find out. I think you already said it in the previous part, right? You need to experiment a bit. Okay, here's part one of my academic text. I'm going to provide some definitions. So if we define a career, and here I get back to this point of, I don't agree with the term a dancing career. There's a very old definition that we still use in research, and the definition is very straightforward. A career is the unfolding sequence of work-related experiences over time. In other words, from the point that you start working to the point that you stop working, everything you do in between that is work-related is part of your career. And the important implication of this definition is that whatever you do after dancing, it is not a new career, it is part of the same career. It is still you. You take everything with you that you're moving towards. It's not as if you're saying, here's my career as a dancer, goodbye, now I'm going to be a consultant, or now I'm going to be a teacher, and everything is gone. It is the same career. It is a new job, or a new profession, or in this case, probably a new identity in many ways, but it is still the same career. And I'm emphasizing this because I think it's really important that you don't have to forget everything that you're doing. It's not as if you have to leave everything behind. It always remains a part of who you are. I think in many ways it can even help you. I'll get to that in a bit, but everything is part of that same career narrative, that same career story that starts very young and that ends, well, later and later because we have to work so long. So that means if we define this as a career, we can define career success, so what makes you successful, as basically any accomplishments or desirable outcomes over time. So the career is everything you do over time. Success is anything you achieve that is desirable over time in that career, within those work experiences. And the funny thing is that we've seen a big change also in how people think about career success over the past few decades, where, and this kind of coincides with leaving behind the ladder metaphor. So we used to think very much about objective career success. We call it objective career success because it's easy to compare people on this. It's quite easy to verify what it is, right? So for example, how much money do you make? How many promotions have you done? Or how many, very special solos have you gotten compared to other people? This is what you can compare. You can say, I had 3, you had 2, I am more successful. Then there's subjective career success. This is much more individualized, more psychological, so to speak, right? So subjective career success is about, do I feel successful? Am I happy with the progress that I've made regarding my career goals, my financial goals? Am I satisfied with my career as a whole? And what we're seeing, and here's my first model, and we're going to do a test at the end of the afternoon to see if you remember all of them. Otherwise, the price for admission is doubled, but you didn't know that. No, the reason I'm showing this is because if you look at the literature, we did this literature review where we looked at all the research done on career success in the past decades. And if you look at this, there's 2 interesting things about this table. One of them is the list of bold-faced words at the left side. These are all different kinds of indicators of what success could be. So it's not only about financial success, it's not only about advancing in your career, it's also about building meaningful interpersonal relationships. It's also about establishing a good balance between work and non-work, or work-life interface. It's also about mastering new things, developing yourself over time. These are all indicators of what success can be, right? And the other interesting thing here is if you go from left to right, you're going to see that in the early days, most research only focused more on the classic stuff, advancing, making money. And the farther we go to the right, the more you see that all these researchers have started to incorporate more and more aspects of career success. So not only are we starting to understand it more, but I think more and more we're seeing that these are all meaningful indicators of what it is to be successful. So success is not just being famous. Success is not just getting that one beautiful gig. Success can be many things. And it's also really important to think when you think about those future career steps, or when you think back to your dancing career and think where you're at now, what are the facets where you do feel successful? And maybe if there's 1 or 2 where you don't feel successful, there are enough others that do make you feel successful, right? So this is success. We're still talking about success, which is kind of this word of which can sound a bit normative, right? I'm successful, you're not. Now I want to talk a bit more about what it means to have a sustainable career. How am I doing in time, Tamara? All right, I'm gonna speed up. I have this nasty habit to speak too much, but so a few years ago, me and 2 close friends and colleagues started to think about, if you look at the research in careers, a lot of it has focused on the individual as the only person responsible for their success. So basically it would be, Brandon, you want to be successful after dancing? Be proactive. Everything will be fine. Which is weird because we also, in every paper that we publish, we start this paper with, careers are so much more complicated and difficult and dynamic and challenging. And so we were like, how is this possible? That careers are more difficult than ever? And at the same time we're saying, yeah, no, you'll be fine. Just, craft some stuff and you'll be successful. So we said we need to think about this in a more holistic way. We need to think about this in a more systemic way because careers are not isolated to a single person. Careers are always part of a larger ecosystem, so to speak. And so one of my personal career highlights, I'm creative here, but not very creative with my hands. But this figure I created, isn't it wonderful? This is the conceptual model that we've been using when we speak about sustainable careers. And I'm going to talk you through it briefly because I do want to get to the end where I have some tips and tricks. So So what we say here on the left-hand side, you see three words: person, context, and time. I think it's really important that we emphasize that, yes, it starts with you. If you want to be successful or have a sustainable career after dancing, you're going to have to work on that. If you don't, no one else will do it for you because it's your career, right? There are as many people here as careers. If all of you would work for omscholing, we could say, you know, there's one employer, but still there is as many careers as individuals. So if you don't do it, probably no one else will do it. But context matters. As I said, if you're a consultant who wants to become a teacher, okay, so that means you have to get some new skills. That means that your job will change. Maybe the pacing will change, the working times will change, the salary will definitely change. Still doable. If you go from assistant to associate professor at the university, that's a nice bit of prestige, but still doable. But if you're a dancer who's going to do something entirely different, that's a very different type of career transition, right? So just saying to everyone, be proactive, is very easy for someone who just has a new role within the same organization versus someone who has to basically reinvent themselves. It also means that, cultural background, for example, or the country you're from can have meaningful differences in how you navigate your career. I often speak to some colleagues from China, and I know a few years ago someone told me, you know, all you people in the US and Western Europe, you emphasize this individual excellence. You need to stand out and show you're better than the rest. If you do that in China, you'll not be very successful because they have this golden mean principle where you have to fit in, take care of the group. Right? So if I do what makes me successful here in China, I will not be very successful. But if they do here what they would do there, they will be overlooked here. So it's a very contextual perspective where you have to be aware, what are the norms, what are the scripts? I think in dancing there are very clear scripts on what you should do, who you should know, how you should get there. But maybe in the future career path that you're going to pursue, that's much less the case. That's important to realize because there might be different rules and different scripts or not to follow. And then, of course, time matters. I mean, when we're small kids, everyone wants to be a teacher. So many of us don't do it, right? Because our motivations change, because we change, because the world changes. Maybe if the new government decides to cut all the funding, omscholing will cease to exist. I don't hope that it happens, but it's something that could happen, right? And then it changes over time. We have it now, we don't have it in 5 years. What's going to happen to those dancers? So the ones who can use their services are probably better off than the ones who have to fend all by themselves. So person, context, time. And then I already mentioned that happiness, health, and productivity. We believe that it's not just about being excellent at what you do. Of course, you have to be good at what you do, whatever you decide to do, but it's also about doing something you like and something you can continue doing over time, right? Because if you're a star performer, whatever you're going to do, you work 80, 90 hours a week, and after a few months, you're still the star performer, but you burn out, because you cannot keep it up, that's not very sustainable. Conversely, if you jump out of bed every morning thinking, yes, I can go to work, and you suck at what you do, you get fired. That is not very sustainable either. So it's about the balance between the three, happiness, health, and productivity. And I'm going to show one more model. This you don't have to remember. The only reason I'm showing this to you is this is a model. So we did another review. I'm doing a lot of reviews. This is a review of career transitions research. And I think the valuable thing in this model, this is why I'm just showing off, but I'm making up a story of why this is meaningful to you, is if you look here, we grouped a lot of these factors. So we looked at hundreds of studies and saw what matters if you're going to do a career transition in the preparation phase, the actual transition phase, and the after phase. So once you socialize into a new role. And there's a lot of contextual things that you cannot influence, but there are also many, many things that you can influence as an individual, which can help you to navigate such a career transition successfully or sustainably. For example, we do know from research there's all kinds of competencies that you can train that can help you to actually be more successful in a new career path, whatever you do. And that brings me to this slide, and this is the most important one. I thought, how can I wrap this up in a kind of more concrete, meaningful, helpful way? So I have 4 tips, and I'm going to do it very fast, otherwise I'm in a fight with Tamara. and I'm going to lose that. I think one thing that I really want to emphasize is that the core idea of sustainable careers is person-career fit. Finding a career path that fits with your values, your talents, your motivation. And so this is probably not something you're going to find immediately. Maybe you're lucky, maybe you're going to find some kind of new dream job. Most of you will probably have to figure it out along the way, and that is perfectly fine. There's enough challenges ahead of you. Don't make them even worse. Maybe you are going to do something that you really dislike. Okay, at least you learned you dislike it, right? Or maybe you are going to find something that you really like. Wonderful. But allow yourself that room. You can experiment. Of course, again, this sounds easier than it is if you have to support yourself financially. You cannot just get fired all the time or be without a job all the time. But the basic principle is it's really important to try and find something, not that compares to what you do now, because it's never going to do that, but something that also fits with you, maybe in a very different way. If there's one thing that research agrees on, there's also a lot of research on elite athletes, which is different than a dancer, but it's quite similar in the sense that, professional athletes, usually around their early 30s, they have to retire from that part of their career and do something entirely different. There's one finding across all these studies that's very evident, is that if you cling to your identity as an elite athlete, that's bad for whatever comes afterwards. If you cannot let go of, I'm a dancer, I'm a dancer, I'm a dancer, you're never going to be successful in something new because you're always going to think, yeah, but I'm a dancer. And I was really among the very best in what I did. And it's going to take time to get to that level of skill and seniority in whatever you do afterwards. And so clinging to the identity of, I'm a dancer, will likely hinder you in navigating successfully to something else. So this is something to be aware of. And again, this sounds so easy, and I know it's not. But research convincingly shows that it doesn't help. Conversely, there's so much that does help. You have so many meaningful and important skills for any job, right? You have to persevere and be so resilient. I mean, there's physical toll, there's a mental toll, there's a high competition. You have to work so much. All of those things, if you successfully navigated those challenges, those are all transferable skills that are important for virtually any job you can think of. So think about that as well. Not just what you'll lose after dancing, but what you can take with you and what will make you a good teacher or a good marketeer or a good whatever. And then finally, and then I'll wrap up, don't try to do what you think you should do, but try to find something, and I hope Omscholing will be able to also help you with that. Try to find something that allows your career to be sustainable or as sustainable as possible. Not just what other people say you should do, but what you feel could make you happy and healthy and productive. Thank you very much.